The date is January 1st, 1777. Colonel Mawhood, the commander of the British garrison at Princeton, just received orders from Lord Charles Cornwallis to march his 1,500 men south to join him at Trenton. At dawn, as they were moving out, there suddenly approached a massive force of 2 battalions. The Continental Army was unleashing a surprise ambush against the British forces at Princeton. The victory George Washington scored at the Battle of Trenton had not only brought back the confidence of his men, but also new recruits who had eagerly joined the Continental Army the days after the victory. Now, Washington's army had grown from but 2,400 men to 6,000, and his own confidence was growing once more. After taking Trenton, Washington left a few regiments there and pulled back his main army to its camp on the western bank of the Delaware River. But soon, as he expected, Lord Charles Cornwallis left New York City with about 9,500 men and marched south towards Trenton. Washington, responding to the British threat, crossed the Delaware River and began digging defensive fortifications on the eastern side of the Assunpink Creek, leaving Trenton to the British. To slow down the Redcoats, Washington sent 1,000 sharpshooters to harass the British army, which now contained 8,000 men, after 1,500 were left in Princeton. By the time Cornwallis reached Trenton, the Continental Army was well in position. After occupying the town, the British launched 3 attacks across the Assunpink Creek in an attempt to storm the American position, and meeting no success and instead taking heavy casualties due to fierce resistance, Cornwallis called off the assault. He decided that when dawn came, he would launch a secret attack against Washington, hopefully crushing the rebellion in a single battle. Night came, and Cornwallis was almost sure that he would capture, if not kill, Washington the next day. But when morning came, the British officers were astounded at what they saw. Washington's men were gone. During the night, Washington had called a war council, and he discussed with his officers about the future plans. He knew that he could not hold off the British for much longer if Cornwallis renewed his attack the next day, especially if reinforcements would be coming from Princeton. Instead, they came up with another plan. They would abandon their positions during the night and attack Princeton. This plan was quickly set into motion. Washington, with 5,000 men, slipped away in the dead of night, while leaving 500 soldiers in the camp to tend the fires and try to convince the British that the main American army was still in place. The march to Princeton was gruesome, and it was deep in winter, so that lack of equipment meant worse conditions on the road. About 2 miles from the town, Washington, having left small scraps of men to delay Cornwallis's main army from coming to Princeton, was left with about 4,500 men. He first sent General John Sullivan and his men to advance towards the town. Then he dispatched General Hugh Mercer to advance towards British officer Colonel Mawhood's men. Behind him, General John Cadwalader led the newly recruited men. Washington advanced in the very rear. At first, the American attack went very ill. Mercer's men were greatly outnumbered by the British, who, after exchanging fire for 10 minutes, made a bayonet charge that scattered Mercer's men. General Mercer himself was surrounded, and, being falsely recognized as Washington, was slain with a bayonet. Then Cadwalader arrived, but when his inexperienced brigade saw Mercer's men fleeing, they broke ranks and retreated, the commander unable to make them regroup. It was at this crucial moment that Washington himself arrived, and he reassembled his broken regiments. With the remnants of Mercer and Cadwalader's men, he pressed forward towards the British, riding at the very front to rekindle his morale. Both sides formed up into a battle line, and they fired upon one another. Washington, who very well might have been shot for he rode in the very front, emerged unscathed, still pressing his men forward in a steady advance. Meanwhile, the American artillery opened fire on the British position, devastating their ranks with grapeshot. Also, the Continental Army's right side was threatening to flank the British left. Some of Washington's men began what seemed like a full-scale bayonet charge, but already the order in the British ranks were faltering, and at length they began to flee. Meanwhile, the redcoats defending the town came under heavy pressure as Sullivan's men opened fire upon them. The reinforcements that were sent to try and flank the Patriots failed to even help before they were torn to pieces by American fire. Mawhood ordered a full-scale retreat towards Post Road. The Americans on the left pressed on, some swarming in front of the British to prevent their escape, though this battle line was broken by a bayonet charge. The British left flank began buckling and retreated under fire towards the town, some taking refuge in Nassau Hall, others fleeing. Alexander Hamilton hauled out 3 cannons and blasted away at the building, while American infantry stormed the hall and took 194 men as prisoners. The redcoats fled across the bridge, and as the Patriots pressed on, the rear guard was broken. For the rest of the day, Washington continued to pursue the British, killing some and taking others as prisoners. The Americans had won again. Then, the Continental Army entered and looted the abandoned British supplies in Princeton, and the men also captured the cannon of the redcoats. But hearing of the coming of Cornwallis, who was marching to Princeton with his 8,000 men, Washington knew he could not stay long. So that night he left a rear guard to hold the bridge on the road to Princeton, and marched north to Morristown, where he settled into winter quarters. The next few winter months contained no major battles, only a series of small skirmishes called the Forage War. The casualty count for either side during the Battle of Princeton is still debated, but it is estimated that American losses were about 30 killed and 50 wounded, while British losses were about 24 killed, 58 wounded, and 194 captured. The Americans had scored another victory, the last one in a series of 3, the Battle of Trenton, the Battle of Assunpink Creek, and the Battle of Princeton. In each of these engagements, Washington took little casualties, and because of his effective hit-and-run tactics, he was able to score so many small but important victories that the British were weary, and after these 3 battles, left southern New Jersey to the colonists. Also, it helped the Americans to regain confidence after its near destruction during the retreat across New Jersey. In the battles of Trenton and the Battle of Princeton, we can clearly see how the element of surprise and superior numbers regionally really helped the Patriots to win. The British would have wished to do open battle with the Americans, wiping them out in a single battle, but Washington instead fought hit-and-run battles, and defeat after defeat the redcoats suffered. And that is how the Continental Army survived the early days of the American Revolution.